Ahead of Saturday, November 4th, when the Southern resident Killer Whales are going to be releasing their new record, Legendary Seasides, at Acadia.
That's right.
I'm excited to be joined by my friend Dan Hilton. At what stage did the Dan Hilton Band transform into the Southern resident Killer Whales, and what's the significance of that moment?
It happened in time for this EP release.
Yeah.
So the last release we did was under Dan Hilton and the Ghost Runners.
Yeah.
And so what happened there, and you sort of maybe vaguely know this, but I had a music career years ago back in the 90s, and I was out of it for 10 years.
Yeah.
Made an entry back in 2012 with a solo EP,
Yeah.
The Secret of Him. The Ghost Runners came about as a backing band, essentially, for my solo EP release. You know how you have a show where you want to represent the songs as they were recorded with the full instrumentation and everything. And so, called some old friends, Krista Johnson on drums, Aaron Johnson lead guitar, and Jeff Hotchkiss on bass, who I'd played with a few times. And we got together, did that show, and then that sort of made me remember the glory and fun of playing in a full band ensemble. And so we continued to play like that, and actually released You Will Go to the Moon as Dan Hilton and the Ghost Runners in 2014. Shortly after that, Jeff Hotchkiss left us. Mark Anderson came on board, bassist, immensely talented, like multi-instrumentalist. He plays a variety of horns and mandolin. And
on this record?
On this, on Legendary Seasides. But I had sort of a conscious thought at that time. I had never been interested in the idea of my name and a bunch of sideliners was never something that appealed to me. It was just something that had happened for that release party, and then it continued. But I liked the idea of a band as a cohesive, sort of unified artistic front. You think like the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, and I don't want it to be like me and session musicians. I want a sort of a group collaborative effort. So it was sort of a conscious decision to move toward that, I guess, to try to, and maybe even a little bit, and maybe this is the first time I've articulated this, but to encourage the band to sort of like, hey, you're in on
to
this
become
too.
the Beatles.
Well, that plus like, hey, maybe you can call some clubs too.
Absolutely, yeah. And that has happened. That certainly happened.
Yeah.
Both at the level of songwriting and speaking of Mark, I think, was it? I think that's the band member who was very involved in some post-production.
That's right.
And some kind of almost songcraft at the post-production stage.
Which is something that I wasn't that used to.
Yeah.
Traditionally, I would go into a practice space and like, here's the song, and then
Let's
everyone's sort of
song.
like doing and so the recording process for You Will Go to the Moon was more or less we're going to try to make sure we give an accurate reflection of how these songs. Let's not screw it up in the studio. Let's make sure that we're doing these songs the way that they're meant to be heard.
Yeah.
And Legendary Seasides, and I wasn't even necessarily expecting it this much. So I have an analogy I think of with like songs as ladders of potential.
Yep.
And you're a songwriter, you've probably experienced this, where you have a song that like you sense this ladder goes really high. It could be a great song, but you're like, no matter how you arrange it or fight with it, you're only climbing a certain
up to a certain height.
You're like, what are we not unlocking here?
Yeah.
And Legendary Seasides was maybe the first recording project I've been involved with where we went into the studio, and a lot of this was because of Mark, where they were like extendable ladders. Like we're finding more in this song than I even knew was there. And and I think around about that time, he's getting, I think, comfortable enough where he feels at liberty to push back. And I've always said, everyone, please, push back on me. And for me, it was a little gratifying to know that I can take it. Like somebody is pushing, like, oh, I'm not getting all defensive. It's like, let's give that a try. A lot of the songs, I would say, came out of the studio better than they went in.
Yeah, wonderful. So which of the songs turned out to be the most extendable ladder?
It was Failing Fearlessly, which is probably going to be the
one with the video?
Yeah.
What did you think of that ladder when you went into the studio?
I was in that position that happens a lot with people, where you're thinking, like, what's the most likely outcome versus what's the most hoped for outcome.
Yeah.
And I had a most hoped for outcome, but the most likely outcome was going to be where we were at playing it live, which is we're just not hitting it, and I'm hoping something happens, or I'm hoping when we recorded it sounds better, but it was not doing what I wanted it to do live. We went into the studio, started building it up from the only perspective we understood, and it was just about done being recorded, and there was something where it's like the chorus is dragging. It's like you get to the chorus and there's something that should happen where it just elevates, and that's not happening. And so Mark and I like go out back to the studio, just sit there, have a beer, and like, what are we not doing that we could do? And this is the first time I've ever done this in my life. We actually we were like, let's look at analogs for songs that we think are sort of in the realm of what the song, what we want it to be, or just the effect we want it to have, and what are they doing? And I've never done that where I'm like looking at what production. In terms of production, like an arrangement, it's like, what are they doing when the chorus hits that's making it, go a certain direction? And by sort of like, oh yeah, a little bit of that, and we went in and we just rebuilt the song.
In this instance, what was the key?
Well, okay, so this is getting really, in there. And it sounds so very simple, but what happened, we had a lot of layers, a lot of guitar, like complicated stuff happening in the chorus. We really simplified the lead guitar line rather than it being this sort of like noodly little thing that snaked its way down, just a 4-note counter melody progression there, and then another distorted guitar. I mean, it's like, if I had ever paid attention to what other artists are doing, everybody's been doing this since the beginning of rock and roll. Like just big root chords under the, each of the chord changes through the chorus, and then we had a sort of an ooh harmony stack going and change it to an actual sung chorus, like an a chorus of singers singing throughout and that seemed to elevate that. And then we did this thing that I remembered from the Swell season and a performance that they had done where they just, and again, not paving any new ground here, but they had just stayed on almost like a choir, like a choral stack, vocal stack, as the song sort of trailed off, and the room is just silent, and it just, hear a pin drop, and it's just this beautiful moment. It's like, is there any way to sort of go for something like that on the recording? And that's where we went at the end of the song.